Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and one of the things I like to do almost every week, not able to do it all the time, but most every week, I like to share with you from part of a book that I've been reading. It's really blessed me and encouraged me in my faith. And obviously there's no substitute for reading God's Word, the Bible, and really want to encourage you to make sure you're spending time in that every day. And obviously I know sometimes life happens, and so, but man, don't let 2 days become 3 days, and with Bible apps you can do that. But man, I love just having my old school Bible and reading proverb of the day and looking at some scriptures from my devotion and just letting God speak to me through his word. But he also gives us books that can help us grow in that relationship. And the one that I read recently and just finished is called Everybody Always by Bob Goff, and the subtitle says Becoming Love in a World Full of Setbacks and Difficult People. And I know we all have people that are challenging in our life, as Joyce Meyer says. We have people that are just kind of like sandpaper to us. They just kind of rub us, the wrong way, roughly, kind of scratch us. And yet I love that she says in the next breath, but I got news for you. You're somebody's sandpaper. And, I don't like to think about that because I think I'm perfect and everybody should like me, right? And yet, if we're honest, we know that's not true. But this book, Bob Goff wrote one about 5 years ago, I believe. It was called Love Does. That was his first book. He is a attorney by trade, which I know most of you think, there's no way I'd read that. But this guy is a follower of Jesus, and the things that God's allowed him to do to help bless others just because he's loved people like Jesus has asked us to do in his word, is just amazing. It's incredible. I've laughed, I've cried as I've read this book, Everybody Always by Bob Goff. But I was a little skeptical because I thought, man, I don't know. This guy's not a writer by trade, and I don't know if he can top Love Does. But I got good news for you. I think personally he did. And, it just one of those things that you go through, and he just talks through the book, talks about how God gives us opportunities to show people, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to show people 2,000 years later that we get to be Jesus with skin on to people. And he said, God's idea, Bob Goff says, isn't that we would just give and receive love, but that we could actually become love. And he said, people who are becoming love see the beauty in others, even when their off-putting behavior makes for a pretty weird mask. If we're all honest, we kind of wear masks, don't we? Either people that are just kind of unique and different from us, or we put on our mask and our life's perfect, and, we're doing great. But Bob Goff goes on to say what Jesus told his friends can be summed up in this way. He wants us to love everybody always and start with the people who creep us out. The truth is, we probably creep them out as much as they do us. And, that goes back to my Joyce Meyer sandpaper line that, we all are somebody's sandpaper. There's people that creep us out, and guess what? There's people that think we're creepy. So, but Jesus asks us to love those people, that Bob Goff says, even the people who creep us out. And he said that I thought was really powerful. What I'm learning about love, Bob said, is that we have to tackle a good amount of fear to love people who are difficult. And, if I'm brutally honest, that's really just exactly what keeps us from loving a lot of people is fear. Just because people are different, whether it's different skin color or different interest, they look different, whatever it is, yet we all have a God-sized shaped hole in us that only he can fill. And, we are the Bible that some people see. Over half the people, even in Kentucky, do not go to church on Sundays now, and we're in the Bible Belt. And so our lives are a reflection of Jesus, and we're the only Bible that a lot of people see. And so I just want to remind you to, when you don't want to extend grace and mercy, to remember that you've had to have it extended to you. And Bob Goff talks about that in this book. And man, I just was so reminded that, I need to be more of a person that extends grace and mercy to those sandpaper people and those creepers in my life, because God has given me mercy and grace, extended it to me so many times when I did not deserve it. And I'm so thankful for that. And, the bottom line is God doesn't, he doesn't want us to live with fear. we don't need to use our opinions and to mask our insecurities anymore, Goff said. He said, we'll become in our lives what we do with our love. Those who are becoming love don't throw people off roofs. They lower people down through them instead, like the friends did to try to get their friend to be healed by Jesus when he was here on earth. Goff talks about we just need to love everybody always. Jesus never said doing these things would be easy. He just said it would work. And throughout the book, Goff just has some unbelievable examples of people. He talks about a guy at the airport that he flies a lot now to go speak and encourage people. He goes to Uganda and does things to help there and started a school there. And so he saw a guy that, just checking your passports and all those things. And he just said, he felt like I've seen this guy so many times, even though it's for 3 minutes, that I'm just going to love on him because I fly at least usually twice a week. So I'm going to see him at least 8 times a month. Sometimes he said I might fly 3 times because he goes, I try to get back home as often as possible so I can be with my wife and not have to spend nights away. If it means getting home late, at least we sleep together and can have breakfast together the next morning. And so, he just talked about this guy, and eventually he got to know him real well, and he was working to try to get his family in from Mexico and save up enough money to buy a house. And he finally got enough money to do that, and Bob just rejoiced with him in all these 3-minute conversations. And unfortunately, right after his family got here, the guy died. And I think he was only like in his late 40s, early 50s. And yet Bob's befriended the guy's wife and kids. And this was all just through loving and being kind to a guy that's checking passports. And, that's a brutal job going through security and people at airports. I've only flown a couple of times this year, and I know a lot of people haven't flown at all. And before that, I think I hadn't flown for a year. But, man, I just think when I was in those lines of security, especially at the Dallas airport and the New York City airport, how much it would take to be just people, because nobody's looking forward to getting their passport and ID and carrying luggage and having to go through the security check. But Bob Goff, the author of Everybody Always, really showed that we can become love at the hands and feet of Jesus in a world full of setbacks and with difficult people. I love in page 17 of Bob Goff's book, he says, big faith doesn't need big words. We also don't need to make faith easier because it's not. We need to make it simpler because it is. He said, children have mastered what most of us are just beginners at. One of the things about kids, in addition to their simple faith, is they aren't afraid of the many things that we're afraid of. Their curiosity about what they don't know outdistances their fears about what they do know by a mile. And I want to ask you today, when's the last time you've exhibited some childlike faith in your life? Jesus has told us that we have to have childlike faith, just going off of what Bob Goff just shared there in his book. And I just want to encourage you. I know a lot of people like me, you get in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we have some people in their 80s that listen, and man, we lose that childlike faith, and we let our logical part of our brain. And I just want to encourage you to ask Jesus to help you have childlike faith today, and look for him in the simple things and where you could be exhibiting childlike faith and not be afraid. And if we take Jesus' heart, his words to heart about having childlike faith and not being afraid, they can move us from merely wishing things would get better for us to bearing up under the circumstances that God actually gives us. They also lets us move from running away and hiding from our problems to engaging and embracing our problems. These words can help fill us with quiet confidence and a contagious hope when we have childlike faith and we're not afraid. What's crazy is when we're not afraid and engage the world with a childlike faith, the people around us, they're not going to be afraid either. Hope and courage do the same things when we let them. They'll spread like a cold, but it's actually a really good kind of cold, Bob Goff says. So I just want to encourage you to have some childlike faith today and look to see where God might want to let you help spread some hope. And, I'm just so reminded as I'm sitting here talking with you, just a reminder came up. I saw earlier today that fashion designer Kate Spade was found dead in an apparent suicide. And, here's a person that, once again, by the world's standards, has it all. I mean, lots of money and fame and can go and travel and buy whatever she wants, yet she lost hope and took her own life. And I just want to, remind you that without Jesus, there is no hope. And yet you may think if you have more material stuff, and I don't mean it's not tight. I know, trust me, this summer's been a tough time for me financially, and yet my simple prayer the last few years has been, God, you are my protector and my provider. And yet here's Kate Spade that had lost hope for some reason that, not sure what the exact reason is yet, but man, that she took her own life. And that's simply the main reason I started this radio program, this ministry, was to give people hope so their life would not be ended and Satan would not do what John 10:10 says, to steal and to kill and destroy. Well, I love this book, and it's so uplifting, and I don't want to be Debbie Downer, so I talk about the unfortunate tragedy of Kate Spade taking her own life. But, Everybody Always by Bob Goff, talking about how we can love people and show them Jesus. God knows that if we don't love the people around us, that, we don't need to start, God, I can't do that till I have a plan from you. Just go out and love somebody, near you, whether it's somebody, your neighbor, do something nice. I've got a guy that's living with me right now. Went through a tough season of life, trying to get back on his feet, and I'm letting him live with me in my guest bedroom, and he's mowing my yard for me as a way to, quote, help pay his rent. And there's just a little bit of grass in between me and the house next to me. And I said, just go on and mow that patch for that guy too. And the guy, who's a good guy, but he said, well, man, he doesn't do that when he mows it, his yard. I said, I know, but you know what? I want to set the example for him. So if you will, and it'll take 30 seconds. He said, oh, I get your point. So he mowed this. It's like maybe 2 strips that you have to mow. And so I'm hoping this guy will see, hey, why are you doing that sometime? And it might give me an invitation to talk to him about Jesus. The simple fact, though, that Bob Goff does remind us in this book is that we can't love people we don't know. And, everybody has got a story, and we all have more things in common than we don't. And simply questions like, where are you from? What do you do? Do you like Mexican food? I mean, the list can go on and on. Did you see that Kentucky Wildcats game, if it's football or basketball season? Joy is a habit, but love is a reflex, and we've got to use it more. And, God didn't give us neighbors to be our projects. He surrounded them with us to be our teachers and show us how to love one another. And it's by no coincidence that you're in the neighborhood you're in. And I want to encourage you to be a light in the darkness in your neighborhood, and that people will see something different in your one and only life. And, after a while, as you grow in your relationship with Jesus, what looks like faith isn't really faith anymore. It's just compliance. You're just being a person that you're walking out with faith. And, when we tell people what they should want, turns us into a bunch of sheriffs. And, that really turns a lot of people off. And I just want to encourage us to love people, not where they could be, not where they should be, but exactly where they are. There's so much more I'd love to share with you in this book. But if you need a good, encouraging book as a follower of Jesus, man, this is great. Like I said, I've laughed and cried. I want to encourage you to check out Bob Goff's new book, Everybody Always. I'm Greg Horn. We'll see you next time on Hope is Here.
CMI is your full-service human resources provider in Central Kentucky. For 15 years, CMI Human Resources has taken great pride in helping organizations and people work. Whether it's employee handbooks or help in filling a position, no job is too large or too small for CMI. Contact the professionals today at CMI Human Resources, 859-296-2800, or online at cmiconsulting.com.